Welcome to the Inside Britball podcast. My name's Andy Taylor and I am joined by Kiwi, Stuart and Isaac. I am back. Thank you very much for covering Kiwi for the last couple of weeks. I hope it wasn't too traumatic for you.
No, it wasn't too bad, although let's just say we're probably all glad that you're back, Andy. I'm sure the listeners are as well.
I couldn't quite twist your arm to continue hosting, could I? But that's okay. I love it. I love coming on and talking ball anyway. But unfortunately, Easter's completely thrown me. And you know when you book a 2-week holiday and go, that's for the first 2 weeks of the season. That's not a clever move. But anyway, it is what it is. You've got to keep your kids entertained during school breaks, haven't you? But I'm glad to be back. Very glad to be back to be talking ball with you all. So let's get straight into it because it sounds like you guys covered one hell of a weekend. So let's get straight into it, shall we? And not waste any time. Let's have a look straight at the Prem that happened in the in adult contact this week in week 3, which is just insane to even consider. We had a number of results that in the south maybe weren't surprising. In the north, maybe so, but I'll give you guys first dibs at that. Stuart, do you want to have a go at what do you think of the results that happened this weekend?
I can do. I also couldn't tell whether you were saying talking ball or talking bull. I couldn't quite make my mind what you were saying, but we'll leave that to the listeners. The south has kind of followed the trend, hasn't it, of sort of the 3 teams at the top battering the 3 teams at the bottom, and I think it's going to come down to which one of those 3 teams beats the other one to finish top. And 2 out of those 3 teams has to get playoff football, don't they? So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. We won't see one of those teams this weekend. Obviously, Bristol are playing in the CEFL, the European Football League, not to be confused with the European League of Football. 2 completely different things. None of our players are paid, are they? So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they do in their fixture on Saturday, I believe. I say with bated breath. We are going to share their poster on that later on this week. So yeah, hopefully they'll get a good crowd down there. And I'll let Isaac cover the game in the north because he knows what's going on up there, doesn't he?
Yeah, I don't know. I think EKP have shown what they're really worth now this year. They had that game against Tamworth and showed what they could really do. And now, going against the Nottingham side that we didn't really know too much about. It was quite a low-scoring game when they played Newcastle. They've had to go up and travel to Scotland, and EKP have handled them quite well. So no, I think it gives a lot of confidence for EKP for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I got some insight into the game the week before with the Coventry Phoenix, where there was a lot of points left on the field from the Coventry point of view, and I'm sure it was probably one of those rusty games, the first game of the season type rust for both sides as well. Caesars will probably be disappointed with their start, right? 0-2. They probably had high hopes for coming into the Prem and taking a lot of momentum into that. So this has been a relatively surprising start for me, considering what we saw at the end of last year with a squad 110 big. We saw the size of their sideline at finals, didn't we? It was almost an extra bold white line down the far end, wasn't it? So it is surprising to see that. But I think that it's nice to see that there might be a third person joining those top 2 in the south, right, in the London Blitz, because the London Blitz did not do this to the Cambridgeshire Cats last year. So have they started to take a turn there and do well? They have faced, obviously, people who were 2 teams that were in and around them last year at the bottom of the division. So let's not give them too many roses, because they've still got Bristol and London Warriors to come, and we'll know where they're at then as well. But I'm very impressed with what I've seen by the London Blitz so far this season. We just don't know how good it is yet, do we? And we'll see how good EKP are when they come up against the likes of Newcastle and Manchester in a few weeks. But Kiwi, is there anything else that we haven't covered that stands out to you for some of these results?
No, I think as we said on last week's pod, and the guys have said, we're still seeing those big score lines coming out of the south. And then in the north, I still think, as you say, things are still up in the air, really. I wouldn't like to call North winner at this point yet anyway. I think there's still been close games and teams probably overperforming from where we thought, or some maybe underperforming, as you say. I think that starts to level out as the season goes on. So definitely in the North, it's far too early to call anything, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. No, so it would be really interesting to see how we get on. I think we've only got a couple of games this weekend as well, haven't we? Which we'll cover in a little while. But things are looking quite interesting. It's the same old down in the south, but who knows what in the north, right? So let's move on from there then and have a little look at what happened in Division 1. Because there was a number of interesting scores up and down this graphic, really, Isaac. And I'll let you have first dibs here. What stood out to you across the Division 1 landscape?
That's Scunthorpe Alpha's Chester Drummer's game. It just stood out because Scunthorpe were coming off of a 21-20 loss to the Yorkshire Rams. They then gone the road, travelled to Chester, and showed what their side's really about. And I think them and Yorkshire this year could have potential to have the top two spots in the Div 1 North. It's going to be really interesting to see how they develop this year, and also when Sheffield come into the mix, because they're still yet to play. So it could be a really interesting time in the NFC 1 North.
Yeah, that's a 31-0 win, Scunthorpe over Chester, which is probably surprising on two on both sides, really, isn't it? The Chester, who have for years been renowned for having a good offense, similar to last year, have stumbled offensively, and then Scunthorpe travelling and getting a shutout and effectively handing it to Chester. That's really impressive, isn't it? Stuart, what about you?
Two in the south that stick out for me. Obviously, last week when we were covering the fixtures, I kind of highlighted Blitz B versus Stallions, and I'd be like, this will be an interesting game. Blitz B obviously came back the previous week, and Wembley coming off the 52, I think it was, 0 victory over Sussex. Wembley have just kept that train running. Took care of business against Blitz, beat them 35-6, and that's at Blitz as well, which is never an easy place to go with the off and on-field facilities that the Blitz have. I mean, it's great that they've got their own facility and own it, but yeah, there could be some improvements there. And the second one is in the southwest, is that Solent Bristol game. Obviously, Bristol have been a really strong side in the south the last few years. And Solent have had a bit of a fall from grace when they come down from the Prem, shall we say. But yeah, it looks like that they've recruited hard, both coaching and playing wise. And it looks like they've built something really successful down there. There's a little bit of variance on that scoreline. Some saying 46, some saying 48. But to be fair, when you're winning by a points margin like that, what do 2 points difference make? And obviously, we don't really focus on points scored. It's more points against. So hope that probably won't come back to haunt them too much. So those are the two games to me that sort of stick out in the south.
And those two that you've mentioned in the south, Isaac, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they're the ones that we pointed towards probably being the ones that are likely to come good in their respective divisions, because we were impressed that with Wembley last year, they just came up against an East Kent Mavericks train, didn't they? If memory serves, I could be wrong. No, I think I'm getting that wrong, aren't I? Rushmore. It was a Rushmore that they came up against, sorry. And then Solent, we know, have dropped down, as you say, a real fall from grace from the Prem, but haven't they done well with coaching recruitment, player recruitment all the way across the south? You could see it through their social media, the number of players that they were taking from all four corners of that area, really. And it's probably been a while since Bristol Apache have conceded 46 points. Because they couldn't concede a point at all last year, could they? And it would be, I haven't done the look back, but I'd be interested to know how long it's been since Bristol Apache have conceded 46 points, because it's probably been a while. Kiwi, there's a number of things across here that you could probably touch upon, but what are you interested in out of these score lines?
I think that Shropshire Birmingham game was probably closer than I thought it was going to be. It's kind of I would almost call them like, rivals. They're quite close. They obviously play each other quite a lot, but I kind of wasn't expecting that to be as close as it was. 2 points is nothing in football. when you're on the receiving end, as Stuart said, when it's a big score line, it doesn't mean much. But when it's these tight games, 2 points really is nothing. And the other thing, maybe just to go back to your point on the Romans, Andy, obviously, being local, I know them quite well. I think what you see with their offenses since they lost their head coach back to the US, who was obviously a big fan of, the air raid style offense. That's when they were flying high, And I think since they've seen that, they've struggled to kind of maintain that momentum and keep that style of football, which is why you're now seeing their offense struggling. And I think they have Jay is now the head coach there. He's a new head coach as well. So obviously that's a team that's still really in that rebuild phase. And I think we're seeing that from the scores, whereas typically we would expect the Romans to be quite consistently solid. But I fear for their place in this division based on the results that we've already seen.
The only thing I would add to that is that they have probably faced the two favourites for the division in their first two games, haven't they, this year? So they faced Yorkshire Rams and Scunthorpe Alphas. Two home games that two home opponents you probably wouldn't want to face in your first two games, especially under new leadership, especially under a developing team. The pictures that we've seen across social media have shown a relatively small team on the sideline. It's not certainly there's not tons of players there, which we've obviously had in previous years. So it is something that I'll be keeping an eye on, because they're obviously very close to where I live, and really interesting to see how they get on. But I would just not maybe light the fire too much, because they have faced who we would probably say are deserving playoff teams in Scunthorpe and Yorkshire. But yeah, I totally take your point there on that. But no, there's plenty there, and it looks like we've got down in the South Central that you've mentioned already, that we've got a two-way fight between Wembley and Portsmouth, haven't we? Brewing quite nicely. But Bulls will probably have marked the Shropshire game as a game that they would like to have taken, and they missed out there, didn't they? So it'll be really interesting to see how that develops as well. Okay, let's have a little. I'm moving on quickly, guys, because we've got a lot to get to, and I don't want to be here for an hour and a half. So apologies if we're not going into too much depth. We're here to keep you updated, but we'll try and remember to give you the scores for those that are listening rather than those watching on the graphics. So Isaac, I know you'll be chomping at this, because there's a number of teams that you'll know quite well. What stood out to you across Division 2, where we've got mainly northern games there this week, haven't we?
Yeah, that Gateshead versus Doncaster game. Gateshead showed in their first game against Darlington that they know how to score. I think they scored around the same points, and again, they've just been able to show how strong they are on offense against the Doncaster side now, who have played 2 weeks in a row, and we're probably lacking on the sideline as well. But also the Lincolnshire Bombers, Leicester Panthers, Leicester winning 43-0. Lincolnshire now, I don't think they've won since maybe 2 seasons ago now, and it's not looking too good for the Bombers. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one in that division between, to see how good Leicester can do, especially with how strong Lancashire Buccaneers are looking at the minute.
Yeah, and that has turned into the 2-horse race that we thought it might be. I know we've only got so many data points, haven't we? We've only got 4 games to go by, but in those games, Lancs and Leicester have stood out, haven't they? So it'll be a juicy game when they come up against each other. Hate to do a spoiler, but this week, or is it next week, isn't it, or something? I might have been misreading it. Anyway, Kiwi, what about you? Is there anything that you've seen across this division? I know it's something that there's been a lot of movement around these alignments, hasn't there? There's not a lot to go by in 3 weeks, but what about yourself?
Yeah, I think I'm not as close to these divisions as maybe some of the others. Obviously, Lee's still struggling, unfortunately, but also I think Plymouth had been quite successful the past couple of weeks, but obviously went down to a narrow loss this week, which I'm sure they will be disappointed about after their strong start in the league. So I'm sure there'll be a bit of disappointment there, because again, I mentioned 2 points being close. For 1 point's obviously a little bit heartbreaking. It's an extra point conversion, isn't it? So, yeah, I think that's probably hoping that they can bounce back and, continue on that kind of form that they found early on.
Yeah, and Stuart, we've always known Swindon to be a pain in the backside to some teams, haven't they? They were that team where they don't look like that they're able to achieve too many points, and then you end up losing to them 14-13 and so on. They are you're going to play it our way type of team, isn't it? They try and murky the waters as such. But then, and I think I saw some back and forth, but with the Norwich Devils for some insight. Is that right, Stuart? Please correct me if I'm wrong. But what insight have you got?
No, you're spot on. Swindon are we mentioned Shropshire and Birmingham in the previous division. Like Swindon are another team that particularly run heavy, old school football, or from what I know, I haven't seen them, been around them for a couple of years, but you sort of two running backs, one tight end, I formation, pound the ball, 3 yards, 4 yards a carry, and we're just going to do it all game long. I know Plymouth are extremely good on socials. I haven't watched any of their stories from the weekend, but I know that they were obviously disappointed to lose by a point. But sometimes you learn more from that sort of defeat than battering a team 40-something, 20-something, right? So I'm sure they'll bounce back and they'll be back in their next game. And again, you are correct. You saw some back and forth with someone from the Norwich Devils, just explaining how much of a rebuilding process they've gone through over the last year or so. And yeah, they've had 2 games straight off the bat in a rebuilding year. And got 0-2. I'm pretty sure they have a week off this week.
Yeah.
Actually, they've got a couple of weeks off. They don't play again till week 6. So yeah, they've got a couple of weeks to sort of look internally, do a bit of review, self-scout, and get themselves ready to sort of go again in week 6. But we appreciate that sort of insight, and we don't get a chance to get out to every single club and watch them or like reach out for information. So if we're ever covering anything, and you want us to mention anything or want us to talk about your club, just drop us a DM or drop us an email, and we'll quite happily talk about you.
We'll have that conversation with you, because it's always good to try and get some insight, isn't it? 100%. And yeah, I mean, the biggest surprise for Plymouth would be that it all goes plain sailing all year as a new team, right? That would be the shock of the season, that someone comes in first season and it all goes completely perfectly and nothing goes wrong. And so to see a blip against the likes of a Swindon, who we know do this to teams, and I'm not taking away from Swindon, they've still come and got that victory after a disappointing loss a couple of weeks before. Plymouth learned from it. You'll come back, I'm sure, and they've got a week's rest now before they travel to Cornwall, who they've already faced. So, it's not the end of the world, but it'll be something for them to work on, won't it? And Ouse Valley can do this Ouse Valley did this to Colchester last year, who ended up winning the national championship. So there's nothing surprising there that Ouse Valley have come away with a victory there, and they go 1-0 alongside the Ipswich Cardinals. So very interesting stuff. But we get more of it this week, don't we? And find out where we're at with these teams. So Kiwi, over to you, because we always give you first dibs with the NWFL. We had one sole game, and it was the game of the week by BAFA, wasn't it? And I'm sure you broke it down quite nicely last week. Did this result match that?
I'm not surprised that Solent won the game. I think they had a tough start in Prem last year. We know that they had, if I recall correctly, and I'm not saying I am, but I think they played London at home, London away, and then they played Birmingham in their first 3 fixtures.
It was something like that, yeah.
Yeah, I remember being completely shocked that you'd given such a new team such a tough run at it. And we didn't see a lot of these north-south games. We mentioned that last week. So we hadn't seen Solent play Manchester before. Both were new teams to Nines last year. I think we all kind of felt that, Solent were probably the better side. But again, we didn't know how much. We didn't really have a lot of comparison points. So I was surprised at the score. I would thought that Manchester will at least get a couple of scores in. We know they've got quite a good QB. But yeah, Solent have obviously come out and just, dominated the game. And I've seen a lot of their social media stuff. I think, they're really promoting the kind of fitness, lifting, all of those off-field activities that makes for a strong on-field performance, right? I see a lot of it on their socials at the moment. So hopefully that will, they'll reap some benefit of this year with some more of these other games against teams other than London and Birmingham. So yeah, congrats to them on that win. I didn't get to see the game. I unfortunately was struck down by a cold at the weekend, but yeah, I've seen some clips and stuff on social media. So yeah, it was a good first game in the Prem Nines, that's for sure.
Well, I think if I remember correctly, when we were previewing the Solent Warriors game for the first game of the season last year, I think we had one of the Solent players on, didn't we? And I think you and Aaron both said that you wouldn't be surprised if Solent challenged London Warriors because of the GB players that they have. So it can't really be a surprise to us at this point that in their second year of nines that they're able to do this to somebody who's relatively new to nines. When it comes to from a program point of view, but they obviously Solent have got more of the individual talent potentially than what the Titans have.
Yeah, and I think it's also when we saw those fixtures last year for Solent, they obviously had a tough first game against London, but then if I recall, they came back and played them again, and the score was, the score difference was dramatically less. They'd learnt their lessons. They kind of improved their game. They've got some really strong players, as we know. As you've mentioned, they've got quite a handful of GB players on that squad. So, that's why I wasn't surprised that Solent won. I was kind of expecting that, but I did expect Manchester to kind of get a couple of scores past them. They're not, as a women's program, Manchester's been around for a long time. Yes, both teams only stepped up to nines last year, but both have kind of, Manchester probably more than Solent, if I think back, have probably a longer history in the women's game. And they're one of those super programs, that we talk about, but it's doesn't necessarily translate to, being the best as we've seen with the men. But for sure, again, it's hard to say if it's just the north-south divide that we're seeing so much throughout the sport at the moment. It doesn't matter kind of what division we look at. I think at the moment, we're seeing this sort of north-south divide in teams. So it's interesting to see that same kind of divide starting to potentially develop in the women's game as well.
Yeah, and Stuart and Isaac, you want to come in on anything related to this? Because I know there's a lot to get to, but did you get to take this in at all?
I didn't take much in. I think it's interesting that Vic touches on the point about links between like men's and women's teams. We obviously spoke at length about the links between adult and unders teams, and I just think that if your team is drafting in or recruiting quality coaches and quality players at the adult contact level, then it's only going to benefit the rest of your program. And we also spoke about how many teams there are in and around the Solent area. So I think having this women's strand of their program, it's only going to bode well for them. And it's great to see them transitioning from last season, where they would have learned so much from those fixtures that we've talked about, into the fixtures against the rest of the teams in this Premiership division to gain results like this.
And I think maybe, sorry, just to build on that point, Stuart, I know, Andy, we've got a lot to get to, but I think it's a valid point in that you see some of these clubs do it well in the women's game, where they support their women's program and they put the coaches in and they put the time and the effort in. But we also know, and I know, that not all women's teams get the same in all the clubs. So I think what you start to see is these super clubs who do it well, who value their women's teams as much as their other teams. You see that really good performance coming through, and they benefit from the players and the coaches in the program. But it's not to say that that happens everywhere, because unfortunately it still doesn't get treated on the same kind of platform as all the other teams, unfortunately, in some places.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it will be interesting to see how Solent do. Are they going to be that third team this year, which will be delightful for the sport, won't it? Yes. Certainly, if they end up, being a pain in the backside to the Warriors and the Lions, won't it? So, that was it for NWFL, wasn't it? There was no
just the one.
sevens or other games, so we can swiftly move on and have a look at the unders. If memory serves, we've got under 19s Div 1 that happened at the weekend. Isaac, I know you've probably seen a lot of these teams in recent years, but I'll give you first dibs at this. Anything stand out to you in Division 1, which is, for those who aren't aware, this is the nines, isn't it, version of contact football in the youth, whether that is junior or youth, I don't care. I call it youth. So under 19s contact, this is the nines version, is it? That's usually played on a Sunday.
Yeah, so the one that stood out for me is that Scotland game, that EKP against Edinburgh Napier Knights. Stuart, I know we know that how good Edinburgh were in the books, and that again, like we say, if you've got a good program in books or a good program at adults, it comes down into your women's, into your unders teams, and I think that's what's happened here this week. We know that a lot of the players for the EKP Knights in books will play for the under 19s one, especially if you're in your first year of uni, and it's shown that how good they were in the Scottish division and in the playoffs has really shone through into the under 19s in their 46 to 33 victory away at EKP.
Yeah, and Stuart, what about yourself? Because I think, that could be a surprise considering what EKP were able to do last year. I think at this level, if memory serves. But then in the south, Rushmore took care of business. Swindon, we know, have developed some good players down there with some success at under 16s. What do you think from what we saw?
You pretty much took the words right out of my mouth, and it's that sort of graduation class. No, it's all right. It means we're on the same wavelength, and we spoke about it while you were away, so it shows that we're all on the same one. So yeah, it comes to that sort of graduation class. You mentioned Isaac knows these guys because he'll have played probably against the clubs, but a lot of these players will have played for their U16s last year, and it shows how, if you get the grounds and the foundations right, it helps your whole program. So the EKP game was a precursor to their adults playing. So you get the fans in. They've got a great home ground up there, and I know that they drum up a heck of a lot of support. They were actually encouraging people to use public transport, so the car parks weren't completely full. They get that much sort of support up there, and they've got club shop, stadium play announcer, music, and everything. It's fantastic. So I think for Edinburgh to go in there and upset that apple cart, I think that's probably fair to say, because EKP tend to go fairly deep every year. So I think that's a big sort of feather in the Napier Knights hat. And we got the score from Solent Swindon, and the Solent guys were like, yeah, we had a bit of an off day, which you always take with a pinch of salt, but it'd be interesting now to see how they kick on and whether that off day becomes another one and another one, or whether they've just knocked the rust off now and they can go again next week. If I don't know if they play this weekend, but the next time they come out, whether they're more ready to go and have a better day at the office.
Yeah, it was always going to be a tricky first game, wasn't it, for Solent? And I always think that it must be difficult that first game must be the hardest game for these sort of programs that have to deal with new players and have to deal with graduation and in both way, coming up and leaving. But it doesn't seem to affect Rushmore in recent years, does it? But we'll see how they do. Congratulations then for continuing to do that. So we saw I don't know if you said it, but we had Edinburgh Napier Knights 46-33 over EKP. We had Rushmore Knights 32-0 over Hertfordshire, and Swindon 28-0 over Solent. So let's see how we go throughout the year. Moving quickly on to Division 2, because we had a tournament, didn't we? That was supposed to be up in Newcastle. Is that right, Stuart?
In my mind, it was supposed to be. So that there was a bit of movement around this fixture, but it wasn't as much movement as I thought. So Darlington were meant to play in this. So we originally had this as a 4-team tournament, and somewhere I plucked out of my mind that it was up in Newcastle, but it wasn't. It was in Scunthorpe. So Darlington didn't travel, so they ended up just playing a 3-team tournament. and then just had 3 games. So it was kind of akin to Scottish divisions, or sometimes the women's football, where they get together and play just 3 games. So we ended up with Scunthorpe, Yorkshire Academy and North East Academy all coming together in Scunthorpe, playing 3 games back to back to back.
Well done to them. Anything in this? You'll know a number of these programs, won't you, Isaac? Being from in and around there, can you give us any insight into these results? Any sort of nuggets that you might have got during the week?
So, not too much about the Scunthorpe Alphas North East game, but it's a shame to see North East not doing as well as they have done in previous years, because I know their under-19s program has been really good in that Division 2. But the North East against Yorkshire Academy game got called early due to injuries, because North East played earlier. They had a lot of injuries in that earlier game, and that spread onto the game with Yorkshire Academy. The Scunthorpe against Yorkshire game, that came down to the last play. I think Yorkshire were trying to see the game out. A little bit of a scruffle happened. Scunthorpe got the ball back. Penalties meant that then they were placed on the Yorkshire Academy 1 yard line. They ended up scoring from that, and it finished 12-12. So it seems to be like a very tight and cagey affair in the D2 North, especially between Scunthorpe and Yorkshire, who look to be the sides who could be the favourites in that division.
And Kiwi, 2 programs doing it well, right? We've already talked about how the adult contact teams of Scunthorpe and Yorkshire are primed to do a playoff run in Division 1, put their name in the hat for Prem next year, and now they've got some developing under 19s, and if they can develop this age, then it's only going to feed into their adult contact group as well, isn't it? It's really great to see.
Yeah, and I think that's what we were talking about before, and we've mentioned it several times over the last couple of weeks, as well as, these super clubs and pipelines of teams, even if they're all just kind of grouped in the same region, you're developing the game at an age group and are kind of feeding into the adult teams in the area, right? And that's how you keep that constant influx of new players, and where you see teams doing it well in terms of the academies, or all regions doing it well, because we know that even though teams might not be associated, they often share coaches, or players coach younger teams. It just develops their program into adult football and makes them stronger. So when it's done well, I think it does make for kind of a formidable group of teams, or super club ultimately, right?
Mm-hmm. And Isaac, I wonder what the impact of potentially a Gateshead Academy, Darlington Academy that obviously didn't travel. I wonder what impact that's had on the numbers at North East Academy. There's a number of academies up there now, isn't there, that is going to be drinking from the same well, aren't they? So I wonder whether there needs to. Does that seem right to you that's going to have an impact? Am I reading this wrong?
Well, the Gateshead Academy, I don't think really is a thing anymore. So North East and Darlington have definitely got a lot more boost to their ranks and everything like that because of their disbanding, I think, last season or season before. But no, that definitely helps, especially also with the fact that up there now they've got 3 adult contact sides, I believe, and also a women's team that's just on the doorstep in Teesside. So there's quite a lot of teams up there in not a highly populated area. So it could be there could be reasons to why North East hasn't done as well as what they could have done.
Right. Fair dues. Okay, let's swiftly move on then, because we've got some where are we up to now? Under 16s. That's right. We're still going on results. We will get to fixtures, and we'll very briefly go over that, I think. So we've got under 16s contact here, Division 1. Was it up in East KP? Did you get that right, Stuart? No, I'm joking. Up in Scotland, we had a tournament there. Isaac, I'll give you first tips on this one, because there's plenty going on up there, isn't there?
Yeah, so I believe Paisley made their debut from the 16s. If someone could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was their debut. So congrats to them for competing. Maybe didn't go the way they wanted with losses against Edinburgh, Napier, and Glasgow. But no, it's good to see the amount of sides up in Scotland, and I think they're all just on like one line of motorway. So no, it's nice to see that the Scottish under 16s is all up there. That EKP doing what their under 19 side couldn't do and beating Edinburgh Napier is also going to be a big standout, because EKP, I think, are a massive name in under 16s, and I think people who have played U16s or have watched it will know how big of a side that EKP are, and that they are just a really tough side to play against and one that wins often.
I'm trying to figure out whether you're right about the Paisley Bears. It doesn't seem right to me.
I know they've been around a while, but I don't know if this is their first
they?
official tournament.
Were they not around last year?
Yeah, it's their first tournament this year, but it's their first tournament this year, but they've been in the league for years previous. Yeah,
they were around last year. Yeah, I just had to check.
I apologise.
Sorry, no, not at all. I just had to double check your facts for you. But I think what didn't happen last year was a Glasgow Academy win, and that happened in spades with that win against Paisley, which is something that stands out to me there. Glasgow absolutely went 0-8 last year, and they found themselves winning Paisley, which I'm sorry to dump on you even more, Paisley, with our incorrect facts and talking about you in particular, but 54-6 Glasgow, well done. Stuart, anything else stand out to you there?
No, I think it's more EKP really achieving and really doing well at this level. We've spoken at length about setting up a good program. U16s, it looks like their foray this year. I'm sure their adult side will be hot on their heels in the Prem North, but yeah, it looks like their U16 side could be their sort of marquee team this season.
Yeah, and it's just great to see so many teams of youth age up there, isn't it? Because we know we've got obviously dwindling teams up that way. So it's really good to see that there's actually teams out there able to compete week in, week out, which I'm delighted to see. Let's keep moving then. Let's have a look at under 16s again, but this one is a Division 1 down in the South Central, Stuart.
We very nearly saw a Rushmore unders programme that lose a game, didn't we? Against the host Oxford Saints. So they will be really looking to have plucked that one, but they just lost by a point to the Rushmore Knights, who maintain that unbeaten record. And they also had a really close game against Solent Seahawks as well. So that we mentioned about how good the Oxford facilities are, and it looks like it was a fantastic day of football with 3 really close fixtures, and then Rushmore versus Berkshire Renegades, unfortunately. So yeah, it looks like that was a heck of a tournament down there.
Yeah, and Rushmore still go undefeated, don't they? I think they had a couple of close games last year as well, but they still keep proving that they're doing it right down there. And it is impressive to do, isn't it, Kiwi? We see fluctuations all the time, don't we? And to be able to do this across 2 formats, at the youth level is really quite impressive with what they're doing down there in Rushmore.
Yeah, and I know we've obviously spoken extensively last year and this year about the program, but yeah, it is genuinely impressive, and it's probably one of those, I'm not sure, and I don't know if we know in detail how they run the teams. I think what you see a lot in unders is you kind of train them together, and then they separate, and you get kind of the benefit of one quite big squad. Not sure if they're doing that at Rushmore, if they're taking the really individual approach given the different formats of the game, but to dominate both kind of divisions at age groups means that they're obviously doing something right, and ultimately adult teams are only going to benefit from that as these players go through those really top teams and unders to move into adult and Bucks leagues eventually.
Yeah, and to come out unscathed in their first tournament, it's that, and you've got Oxford will probably be happy with their showing, won't they? Considering who they came up against. They came up against established programs, and they've done really well there in their first tournament. Stuart, were they around last year? I'm trying to remember whether Oxford were. Yeah, they were. Yeah, and they were in the South Division last year.
Yeah,
and went 3-5. Looking at it, so that's encouraging for them for sure. Brilliant. Any other takes from you, Isaac? I know South is South for you, and you don't pay attention to it, but no, I'm joking. Anything else stand up to you?
No, not really. I mean, it's hard when it looks like Berkshire Renegades is going to have a tough season. It looks like the only points they can score is on defense. So it's going to be quite a tough one for them. Solent are always quite a big name in U16s as well. So I think it's going to be an interesting one, especially towards the back end of the season with all these sides having to play each other again.
I think we've talked about it. We obviously haven't published on unders because it's very difficult to do. But I think we've spoken about it off air about how, gosh, as a new program to come up against these three teams, yikes. For Berkshire, who are first in the league this year. I don't know if they've been around previously. Sorry, guys. My history on under 16s isn't amazing, but they're certainly new this year compared to last year. And to come up against these three teams in your first season back, they've got a tough challenge. But all they can look to do is to get on that field and get those reps in and prepare themselves as much as possible and continue to develop, can't they? But to keep Solent to 14, a well-established team who scored well over 40 points a game last year, they've done well. So on Solent, they're obviously in transition. Maybe it was a first game jitters, but we'll see how they develop over the season as well. Amazing stuff. So, and breathe. We've done the results. Should we quickly scan through the fixtures that are happening this week? Then we can talk about what stands out to us, and we can move on swiftly, can't we? So let's. If I've done it right, yes. Brilliant. I've got it up, the Premiership stuff. So to note, there is also a CEFL game that Stuart has already talked about. So we haven't put you up on screen, Bristol Aztecs. Don't shoot us. We will put you out on our socials separately. But we will have Bristol Aztecs in the CEFL against Amsterdam there. But we've also got two Prem games going on this week. Stuart, do you want to have first dibs at what you're expecting to see this week?
I can do, but I think I'm probably going to steal Isaac's thunder, and I'm really looking forward to that Newcastle Coventry game. I think the Warriors game will probably take care of itself. Sorry, Cambridge, but it'd be interesting to see how many or how much the Warriors rotate through, and sort of what sort of scoreline they can put up there. But yeah, that Saturday game between the Vikings and Phoenix will be interesting to see. Obviously, with Phoenix having the close fixture against EKP and Vikings having the close fixture against Caesars, to see which team's offense comes out firing in this game, or whether we have another close affair. We didn't actually review whether we had the over/under, and I think Kiwi, you had the over on that EKP Caesars game, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Kiwi.
My
Go on.
My 14-7 scoreline didn't happen. There you go.
No. It's not often that I get them right, but
That's awesome.
I did manage to get one last week.
And what do you think then, Kiwi? What are you expecting to see? And I think it's fair to us to not spend too much time on the Warriors Cats game, knowing full well what happened last year and what's happened to Cambridgeshire in the first two games. So I don't want to dump on the Cambridgeshire Cats too much, but we do want to talk about how we probably expect a dominant game from the London Warriors. So let's talk about that North game. What you expecting?
I think for me, the thing here is, as Stuart kind of already said, and I don't want to, repeat too much, but as I mentioned before, in the North, we really don't know what's going to happen, and all of these games are important, right, to kind of give us yardsticks, and all of these points and wins are ultimately going to prove really important come the end of the season because this division is so close. So I think although, you might lean one way or the other, and I'm not going to commit, I think both teams come out knowing that they really need to win this fixture, and as those kind of middle teams of the division, I guess ultimately we don't know how that's going to shake out, so all of these games are important. So I think you start to see even this early in the season that they're not playoff games, but they may as well be in certain senses because we know how the division is so close. So I think you can't kind of, for me, call it either way because you don't really know what's going to show up on the field.
Yeah, Isaac, we've got a Coventry team who travelled to EKP who are clearly a good side, and they lost by 2. And then we've got a Newcastle team who lost to an 0-2 team in the Caesars and won by 4. How would you call this? What are you thinking? What are you expecting from this game?
I'm expecting it to be quite close. I think we expect Coventry to come out and kind of say, yeah, we travelled to Scotland, we only lost by 2 points, and take that as kind of a positive, and also take a positive that they've done their 2 longest journeys after this game. After Saturday night, they don't have to travel, a ridiculously long way anymore, and they can go to a Newcastle side who, had the moments against Nottingham, but weren't too impressive. And they had one big play, which was just a go route, and and the wide receiver beat he's the DB, and that was pretty much it. So it'd be interesting to see if Newcastle can kind of start to show what they can really do and what made them so successful last year. But also if Coventry can just keep going and take what they learned from the UKP game into this one.
Yeah. I totally agree with you, Kiwi, on you saying that this feels like, even this early on, really important game for Coventry to kickstart their season if they're going to, and then Vikings if they're going to try and to establish themselves as one of the better teams. They've got their 2 teams that they surrounded them. Sorry, they've got in recent weeks. They've got their 2 teams that they surrounded themselves last year in Coventry, who were Tamworth last year, and Newcastle, and Manchester Titans coming up. This feels like an important side for them to go up and collect the win. Stuart sent me a note to tell everybody that 7 p.m. kickoff Saturday evening for the Bristol game. Thank you very much. We will share that across our socials as well, I'm certain. So let's quickly move on to Division 1. I've put up the wrong one first. We'll go South first because that's the one I've put up. I meant to put.
I thought we were just Southern, and I got scared.
Yeah. Whoa. Well, hey ho. I am the MC of the party. This is where we're going. So, Stuart, I will give you first dibs at this card as I usually do. Is any particular fixture tickle your fancy this weekend?
I think for me, it's the 2, I say, new teams on the block, as in they haven't played yet this season. So I think Essex Tridents versus Kent Exiles. I think that's going to be an interesting fixture. Obviously, Kent have a lot of prestige around their programme, having been sort of a Premiership team a number of years ago, and Essex Tridents coming up, having amalgamated 3 different teams a few seasons ago as well. So I think that's going to be an interesting fixture, whether it's sort of new boys on the block versus the old stalwarts. They probably won't appreciate me calling them that, but that's sort of one interesting fixture for me. And then South Wales, can they score double-digit figures? They don't often do that, but against the Somerset Wyverns team, I'm sure they'll be looking to put plenty of points up there. And obviously, can Somerset hold them? Can they do a job or a number on South Wales as well? So those are the 2 that sort of stick out for me.
Yeah, Isaac, what about yourself?
Yeah, that London Blitz B against Portsmouth game really sticks out to me, just to see if the Blitz can bounce back after the loss last week. But it's going to be an interesting one there to see what the Blitz can really do, and see if they can return to winning ways.
It could be. It feels like an important game for London Blitz B already, doesn't it? After what I'm sure you guys deemed as a shock loss to Berkshire Renegades, and ultimately, what is Berkshire? Because they lost to Portsmouth last week, but now they're coming against old foes that they saw last year in Division 2 in Sussex. These are the two teams that went up. So it is very interesting to see how that goes, and I think I'm interested to see what does happen with Blitz B and Berkshire. Kiwi, you nodded quite vigorously at the London Blitz B game. Is that what you're looking at as well?
Yeah, I was looking at that as well, thinking about that result that we saw last week, and if they can kind of get the train moving again with a win this week against ultimately probably a difficult Portsmouth team. So yeah, I am with Isaac on that one here.
Yeah, and welcome to Division 1, Colchester Gladiators, who host London Olympians, which I got to say I was pipping for the division title at the beginning of the season. So it'll be interesting to see how they can fare against a good Division 1 side in the London Olympians. So let's see how they get on this week. Maybe the North comes up next. Yeah, brilliant, fantastic. There we go. Isaac, first dibs, go.
Yes, finally. So the Merseyside Nighthawks against Sheffield Giants. Sheffield Giants' first game, they recruited quite heavily, looking like a brand new side against the Merseyside Nighthawks, who are 1-0. But since their first game, they lost a friendly against Rosendale. So we don't really know what kind of Merseyside side we're going to get, how good are they going to be, etc. But then Yorkshire against Chester as well. That's going to be a great game. See if Chester can bounce back after their loss against the Yorkshire Rams in the first week.
Yeah, totally. Kiwi, you know a number of these programs. What are you thinking around some of these fixtures that we're going to see this week?
Yeah, I think as Isaac said, the kind of Merseyside, who are Merseyside, they've kind of played one game, got a win, which we were all happy to see. Then that kind of lost on the friendly, but you don't know how that was played, of what the rules were, how the rotation was on that. So I think it'll be, interesting to see how they come out this week against a Sheffield side that I think probably have also been rebuilding a lot, like the Nighthawks have been. Chester, I think, might struggle again this week, if I'm honest. I think, that's, it's a big trip and it's, against a strong team. And then correct me if I'm wrong. I was just checking on my phone, but I hadn't quite caught it up. Is that Birmingham, Staffordshire, the same game we saw last year? It was Shropshire, like that close game last week, wasn't it? Not Staffordshire.
Yeah.
Getting my Staffordshires and my Shropshires mixed up. My apologies.
It's all right. Estelle will shoot you later.
I know I'll be in so much trouble on the inside
Too
Red
far
Bull
south for me.
WhatsApp chat.
Not good for any of them
Yeah.
places are.
They're very close together, Isaac. Very close, and not really that far from Chester. I'll give you a geography lesson later.
Awesome.
But yeah, again, interesting to see how that game will go. I think with that close game with Birmingham last week, it'll be interesting to see where they stack up against Staffordshire, who are, I believe, think they've got a strong program this year. So, see.
Yeah, sure. It feels like that this is an important game for Bulls, isn't it? They potentially at the beginning of the season circled this one as a potential win, maybe a team that they could finish above, considering that they came up from Division 2. What's your feelings on the Midlands, which Isaac says is part of the South?
Yeah.
It's one of those divisions where anybody can beat anybody, and yeah, I think this is probably the most likely one for Birmingham. I think they'd have gone to Shropshire last week. It's been a long week and it's only Wednesday. They'll have gone to Shropshire last week wanting to win. You never go wanting to lose, but they'll be disappointed with what they came away with. But this week they'll go there. They'll host Staffordshire. They'll go to their new ground they're playing at this week, and they'll really be wanting to sort of hold their own house and sort of really sort of attack Staffordshire. They're a team sort of there or thereabouts. We spoke about yo-yo teams before we came online, didn't we? And I think sort of Staffordshire, Birmingham. To be fair, all four teams there have all bounced between Div 1 and Div 2 of recent years. So yeah, I think both of these fixtures will be key to who potentially gets some sort of playoff football, whatever it is for Div 1. Now they've rechanged all of that, and which team can avoid relegation or avoid a playoff to not get relegated whenever we're at now. I don't know, I haven't refreshed my knowledge yet. But yeah, I think both of those fixtures will be key when we review it next week to say, okay, yeah, but Birmingham are back in it, or they're going to have to do that playoff. And same for Shropshire and Sandwell. I think, there's lots of ties between those clubs, lots of players and coaches that have bounced between the purple and the black and yellow, although it's now white. I still can't get over that. But hey, personal opinion. And yeah, I think that's going to be another tasty affair that a lot of teams will look between and go, yeah, that's one I want a victory in here.
Yeah, well, Sandwell, thinking about it, it's going to be an important one for both of them because they're going to try and separate themselves from the back over the next couple of weeks. And this one is 2 1-0 teams, and we'll see where they fall. Just a quick note that Rossendale aren't Scottish, but they are part of that affiliate sort of associate fixtures that are taking place between Rossendale and the Scottish side. So Clyde Valley travel down to Rossendale and have an associate game there, which is great to see. So it doesn't count, but it does if you're a developing team, of course. And just on a personal note, I know that there's a player who's going to take to the field for the first time in a couple of years at the Merseyside Nighthawks, Craig Owen, who's a really good guy and someone who's bounced around a number of Northwest teams, and it'll be great to hear how he gets on the field this week. So I'm not sure he's listening, but just want to give him a little bit of a shout out because he's a good one. He had to pull away for multiple reasons, and he's back, a running back for the Merseyside Nighthawks. So hopefully he can bring his championship winning caliber running style back to the Nighthawks field there. Let's move on then. Let's have a little look at Division 2. Sparse graphic there, isn't it, Stuart? What do you think?
It is. Yeah, there's only a couple of games this weekend in Division 2. I think in a division where there's only 4 teams, you tend to get weekends where they're a bit more sparse than others. So yeah, we've got Lincolnshire Leicester, which is a really tasty tie. We'll look to see how Leicester travel and whether they can put points up on the road as well as at home. A team that have bounced around, but I still think we'll take care of business there. And then Oxford Ipswich, again, Oxford will put on a heck of a game day there, and it's a memorial game, that one for a coach that passed away during pre-season, unfortunately. So I hope that they are able to raise a lot of awareness and a lot of funds for that, for the charity involved with that game day.
Brilliant, well done to them. And it'll be interesting to see where Oxford are. So from the footballing side of it, they obviously didn't do so well last year. Have they been able to bounce back as a programme? That's what I'm interested in. Any notes from Isaac or Kiwi, or are you happy for us to bounce straight onto NWFL? Yeah? Awesome, let's go then. Kiwi, NWFL, we've got one game again, but we've got the champs. They're back in town, and they host the Teesside Steelers.
Yeah, and this is a fixture that we saw last year. Obviously, Teesside and Birmingham played the one fixture, I think, last year with Birmingham coming out on top, unsurprisingly, 62-6 scoreline. So I think it'll be interesting to see how this one goes this weekend, because I think I mentioned last week in the podcast about Teesside potentially benefiting from the dropping of Leeds into associate status, right? And I am led to believe that several of the bigger names at Leeds have decided to go to Teesside this year. We suspected some might have also gone to Manchester, but Teesside will obviously be coming out trying to get some more points past, the champs. And Birmingham, Birmingham historically strong. Unfortunately, I probably don't see this going any other way than the way of Birmingham, but I hope for Teesside that they can come out. They're a good team. They're always a good team to play. So, hopefully they can come out and put some points past them, and we'll see if they did maybe benefit from that unfortunate circumstance surrounding the Leeds Chargers.
It's always helpful to travel with numbers, isn't it? So hopefully they're able to do that as well, because it's an awkward journey, isn't it?
Yeah, and Teesside have always been historically quite a small team, and they were even that last year when they came up into 9, still quite a small squad size. So, it'll be interesting to see how well they've recruited in the off season as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, any other notes from you guys? no, it'd be interesting to see where the champs are at when we get to Sunday night for sure on this one. Some unders, Isaac, isn't there this week? Division 1 in the under-19s, a number through here, and we see the return of 3 very good sides at the under-19 level across the 3 fixtures. Any notes from you for this?
Yeah, I can't wait to see the result of the Samwell against Nottingham game. Nottingham obviously having their incredible season last year, but Samwell also having a really, really good year. So I'll be really interested to see, especially how that one goes, because there's going to be a thing, a lights out game, and then also that Highland EKP game. EKP didn't really get the win that they wanted last week, so it'll be really good to see if they can go back on the road, and see if they can get their first win of the season.
Yeah, totally. I have to apologise to anyone who's watching and seeing a very distracted Andy and Stuart, because as you can probably tell by Stuart's jersey, there is an important football game on at the moment between Arsenal and Crystal Palace, and Crystal Palace have just equalised to go 2-2. So we're all a little bit twitchy at the moment, but we will concentrate on our podcast, won't we?
Spoiler alert, if you wait for match of the day later.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get it edited that quickly, Stuart. Come on. But yeah, no, I've got to say, out of all of these, it's great to see Highland versus CKP. That'll be a great match. I'll be interested to see how that goes. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you, Isaac. But are London Blitz back? That is what I want to know. After decades of dominance, they had a fall last year because they came up against a very dominant London Warriors side who obviously weren't able to capitalise on that in the playoffs. But what sort of work has happened to that programme in the London Blitz under-19s, which has dominated this sport for many, many years? And I'm interested to see what they bring to the South London Renegades for sure. Anything from you, Stuart or Kiwi? Are you happy for us to swiftly move on to the next group of games, which is the Division 2, and this is a Pool Dolphins a tournament, and a number of new faces, Stuart.
Yeah, nice to see the Bristol Aztecs addition as their under-19 team. Obviously, Bristol's a hotbed for quality football, so I'm sure that they've been building this in their pipelines for a number of years, and it'd be interesting to see how they come up against the South Wales Warriors, who have been around the under-19s fascia for a while. Really a random word, but I couldn't think of anything better. They've been in the picture and they've been around the landscape of the game for a long time. It'd be interesting to see how they insert themselves into this league, especially with Pool Dolphins as well, because they've been around this division as well as U16s. So it'd be interesting to see how their U16s graduate and how this division sort of settles after this tournament. This is probably where my eyes are looking come Saturday evening, Sunday morning, to see what the results are like from this game day.
Yeah, South Wales Warriors obviously the division champs from last year, didn't they? They went on to win finals day last year as well, didn't they? And we obviously see Pool, who were a playoff team last year as well, but they were. And then Berkshire, how have they been able to develop? How are they able to keep developing there? And then obviously we've got Bristol. Really interested to see how that goes. Do we have any insight, guys, as to how this is going to work? Is this some Filton guys going into the Aztecs program, or do we know whether it's a totally separate team? I don't think I've been able to garner that. Have we got anything from anywhere else?
You'd have to assume so, just because last year I know a lot of the Pride, the youth players had to go to Somerset to play. So you must assume that now maybe they're not directly affiliated, but a lot of the lads who play at the SGS Pride will be going to the Bristol Aztecs and the lads games.
That'll be interesting to see. If you are listening and you have any insight, please let us know, because we're interested. Because obviously we're seeing a lot of teams form in Bristol area, and it'd be interesting to know. We even asked Tom, couldn't we, see what he knows? But yes, no, really interesting to know to see that, and we'll be looking forward to those results for sure over the weekend. Now that is some review, and I think we've covered everything.
Have we missed anything? Have I missed anything? No, don't think so. I don't think we've got any under 16s this week, have we? I'm not going to say sign off, and you're going to tell me off for missing under 16s, Stuart.
No, we don't. We skip EU16.
Yes.
That's just me that managed to forget them, even though I had a list last week. We did cover it. Stuart thankfully reminded me, but that's what happens when you go off and you leave me in charge.
I'm sure you did a fantastic job, Kiwi. Please don't be too hard on yourself. No, it's fantastic to be back and to be talking ball. We're in the thick of it now, aren't we, Stuart? Holding down the fort with the graphics for sure, and we'll keep you up to date, no doubt about it. Little plea: if you do have any scores, please share it with us. Send it our way. So we can get it out and share your successes with the rest of the community. It looks like Kiwi, you want to come in with a note?
I was just gonna say, we do promise we will do a flag NFFL podcast soon. Now that Andy is back, we haven't forgotten you. I know I mentioned it last week. We're waiting for Andy to come back. We will get to you probably next week sometime. I suspect with this week being a short week. Again, we will get to covering what's happened in those games and stuff in the past, not last weekend, the weekend before, before the next game day.
Yeah, some tasty results that came through for sure that we're interested to get to.
He's metaphorically cracked the flags. Now he's literally going to crack the flags when you do the podcast.
Yeah.
I
tell you what,
I think we had that.
I definitely didn't expect to go to Ireland and get sun. I went with wellies. I went with all sorts, and Stuart clearly hasn't heard the term cracking the flags before, so shows how old I am.
Me either.
No,
I think we established.
True.
I think we established it wasn't an age thing though, because this is how we ended up on offline age conversation last week. Because I think Isaac, you'd heard the term before.
Yeah.
So maybe it's a regional thing rather than an age thing.
It's what we know what it is, Isaac. It's northern. That's what it is. It's northern.
It's nice, isn't it? It's nice.
Superb. Brilliant. Right, we've rambled on for long enough. Thank you very much, everybody, Kiwi, Stuart and Isaac, for your insight to the results and what's due this weekend. Get in touch with some results and we can get them out to you. We'll be together, me and Stuart, getting these results together for Sunday, and we'll get them out as soon as possible. Look out on our socials for links for the CEFL game, for links to all their streams that are going on across the country, because I'm sure there'll be some, and we'll share them with you as well. But until next time, thank you very much, you three, for your time, and thanks to the listeners and the viewers for joining us once again. We'll catch you again.